right, so this is the third video studio computer build series of videos on how to build the ultimate PC for video production. Okay, and so we've made some more progress, and I hate to do this because if you watch the last video, I kind of went through all the components. But what I'm seeing is it really doesn't take that long to give you the numbers here. So I know that you can fast forward through this, but we're working with the AMD Micro Center Ryzen 9 9950X CPU processor with the Gigabyte X870E Icros Master Motherboard, ATX DDR5 4XM2, PCIe 5.0, USB 4, Wi-Fi, total cost of $1,031. In the last video, I talked about the fact that you want to buy that as a bundle. So if you're ever going to get a motherboard, if you're not going to take a CPU from a previous build, you're going to want to buy those two together. Okay, and then of course I did a lot of investigation, and like I said, I've used Grok, the AI, and you don't no longer air cool these advanced processors. You're going to liquid cool them, and of course we went with the Arctic Liquid Freezer 3 Pro 360 from everything on YouTube and Grok. This is probably the best CPU cooler on the market. I won't get into all the details. AMD, of course, it's got the AMD AM5. You're going to want to make sure any water cooler you buy supports the CPU configuration that you bought. What was really cool was this was only about $95, which is incredible. I think the air coolers actually sell for a lot more than that. Then, of course, if you want your PC lit up like a Christmas tree, you want to get some RGB memory to go in the PC, and so we went with the G.SKILL Trident. If you watched my previous video, they were using Kingsford, I think was the memory they were using. So there's all kinds of good name brands, but this came recommended by Grok, the Series DDR5. And of course, if the motherboard supports it, you're never going to put DDR4 in a DDR5 motherboard. So I know it's a lot more expensive. RAM, AMD, Expo. Well, of course, you can support Intel. Now, the motherboard has 256 capable RAM, and we've talked about you could buy 432. You're better off buying two 64s, and that was a total cost of $548. Now we're going to get into what I didn't cover in the last video. Was we went with a fourth M2 drive. This is actually, I didn't mention this. I did put a text in there. What the motherboard comes with is you've got the CPU. PCIe 5.0, which they're called CPU M2 slots. This is actually for the Southbridge slot. So it actually operates on a different bus on the motherboard. And even Grok pointed out, once you populate the M5 slots, you actually split the throughput. So you're not going to really get that PCIe 5 performance. So if you just wanted to go with two, you probably want one on your Southbridge and one on the CPU A slot. And we talked about that in the last video. All right, so now, and what I put in there, I put in the Western Digital Black 8 terabyte SN850X NVMe internal gaming SSD solid state drive, Gen 4 PCIe M2 2280, up to 7,200 megabytes per second. Now you could go with the next one. Well, actually, we bought two of these Crucial 710. I won't go back into that. And if you want to see the USB or the M2 configuration, go back to that video. All right, and then of course the graphics card is very important. I talked about the ASUS card, which actually is a bit better than the Gigabyte, but we went, because of compatibility for a Gigabyte motherboard, we went with the Gigabyte NVIDIA GeForce RTX 5080 WINDFORCE SSF overclock triple fan 16 gigabyte GDDR7 PCIe 5.0 graphics card. Okay, and the only reason we did that is because we had a Gigabyte motherboard, and talking to Grok, because like I said, I'm working with the AI as much as possible. Hold on, I'll just set this over here. And that card alone cost $1,074. Now, there is a model above the 5080, but but it's $1,000 more. You do you. All right, and so we're going to get into the mother supply, or the power supply, here in just one second. And I didn't talk about this enough in the last video, but we went with the Corsair HX 1500i. It's a 2025 power module, fully modular, ultra low noise ATX power supply with 12 volts, 2x6 cable, ATX 3.1, PCIe 5.1 compliant, cybernetics platinum. We talked about the importance of a platinum power supply in the last video. You know, don't buy anything but platinum. Fluid dynamic bearing fan, which just means it's going to be a pretty damn quiet power supply. And you can look at that. That was, I mean, I say only, that was $368. Okay. And then we talked about the storage here and the need for, if you're going to do videography, you want internal storage and you want a lot of it. And if you go with the 3.5 drives, which I just bought 2 of, and we'll just get into the specs on that. These are the Seagate Iron Wolf Pro 28 terabyte enterprise NAS internal hard HDD hard drive, CMR 3.5. That's what I was talking about. 3.5 inch SATA, 6 gigabits per second, 7,200. Now you can get up to 10,000 RPM. But I don't need the speed. I'm using the M2 drives for the speed. I just needed the storage. And when you come down to a 7200, you save, well, pretty good money. 512 megabyte cache. You can run RAID if you want. I'm not going to be running RAID. Now, those 2 drives alone cost $1,031, well, $32 really. But, I mean, you got 28 terabytes here, 28 terabytes there. You do the math. That's a hell of a lot of storage. All right, and then the most important thing that I talked about in the last video, and we're going to show you this here in just one second, we went with the NZT H9 Flow RGB Plus 2025 large dual chamber ATX mid-tower airflow PC case, which includes, and by the way, you want to buy the case with the fans installed. That way you don't have to do it, and it doesn't cost that much extra. If you go out and buy the fans on your own and buy the case on your own, and you do you, man. I mean, that's a hell of a lot of work. But I guarantee you, buying the combination is probably going to be about the same price or probably less. And so it's got 6 140 millimeter fans. And by the way, I think these are RGB. We won't know until we hook up the power. We're far from doing that. 120 millimeter, and it's got the control hub. If you watch videos, I'm going to try to go out on YouTube and find some wiring videos that we'll include in here. We'll talk about that in just a second. 420 millimeter radiator support, back connect ready, $305. Now you say, oh, I can get a case for $100. I can get a case for $100. Good, you do you, man. I'm going to tell you, the case, in my opinion, is the most important thing for a computer build. I mean, if you buy too small a case, yeah, you're going to be all cramped in there. I've seen people do crazy stuff on YouTube, like unscrewing the fans from your water cooler because it just wouldn't fit in the case right and everything else, you know. And also, you can get a real tall case, which is I've done in the past. I want the fat, and that's why when we talked about the case, where does it say control hub, large dual chamber? That's very important. So the case actually sits pretty low down, but it's wide as hell, and we're going to show you that in just a second. Now, I talked in the last video. I went with the LG 27-inch Ultra Gear QHD 27-inch monitor, and you can read the specs on that. I'm not going to go through it. HDMI 2.1 display port. Okay, that's not enough territory, all right? But when you go out, when you get up to like a 32-inch monitor with the curved screen, yeah, you're talking some big bucks, man. I think you're better off just going with 2 27-inch advanced monitors. And then you got 27 inches here, 27 inches there. In my case, I've got 4 monitors, but this is the only advanced monitor that I have. And look at the price tag. I say only, but it's still only $291. All right. And then, of course, you're going to want your UPS. You do whatever UPS you want. I talked in the last video about how APC has changed their rules. I bought 2 of these CyberPowers, CP1500, FCL, CD, PFC, sine wave UPS battery backup and surge protector. So it's got 6 surge protecting slots and 6 battery backup slots. It's fairly, it's not real heavy. Some of the APCs, if you go with the smart UPS, they're really heavy. But APC, they're junk after about 4 years. I don't know what the situation's going to be with the cyber power, but I'll probably just keep them. And that was 257 times 2. All right, so we're getting long in the tooth here, but I just kind of wanted to get things up front out of the way while we're going to get into where we are. And then, of course, I bought a microphone, and that was the Shure MV7i smart microphone. Okay, we're not going to get into that. But one of the things that the microphone comes with, and I don't think I talked about this enough in the last video, is it comes with a USB connector, or the webcam came. So I on the previous computer build, I didn't have enough USB ports. And so you can buy this, and I'm just wanting to read this to you because I didn't put this in the last video. This is the USB to USB-C cable adapter 2-pack, USB-C female to USB-A male adapter, 10 gigabytes data transfer, 60 watt fast charging Type-C, 3.2 converter compatible with laptops, PCs, flash drives. So that gives you the ability to plug a USB cable into a USB 3.1, 3.2, 3.0, whatever port you want to plug it into. And then, of course, we went with the Insta360 link tripod bundle for my webcam. Like I said, they're going to be coming out with a new webcam in January, so you might want to wait on that. I just went ahead and bought it because I was worried about those Chinese tariffs, which look like they're not going to go into effect. So maybe I pulled the trigger too soon, but it never hurts to have two webcams so that when you're filming, you can switch from this camera over here to this camera over here. And this also supports virtualization, green screening, which is really, really cool. All right, so then we, and of course, it came with the, I wanted to be able to, if you go up to, I can't remember the software, daggone it, but if you're going to do video interviews and stuff, you can actually use your cell phone as a camera, all right? And so I wanted to kind of be able to switch between cameras in my office when I start doing this professionally. And so this is a newer phone tripod mount adapter, the Acrotype QR base cold shoe, 1/4 inch to 3/8 inch holes, 360 swivel. That's exactly what I'm using to film this video, as a matter of fact. Phone holder compatible with the iPhone, because what happened was the webcam came with a stick where you could place it on your desk, or you can mount it on top of your computer screen. I mounted it on top of the computer screen, so I needed this to be able to use the stand, the tripod stand, with the phone. So let's keep going here. All right, so woo! Now you do whatever keyboard you want. I went with the Red Dragon S101 MKS gaming keyboard and mouse with wireless and tri-mode. Now, the great thing about this keyboard is you can run it wireless or you can run it connected. Now, I've had some bad experiences with wireless keyboards in the past. Okay, so, but sometimes, you don't want all them wires going everywhere. So you can, from what I understand, I've only run this as connected to the computer through the cable. I haven't tried to run it wireless, but supposedly you can do that option. And we talked about the Gorilla Grip Silky Gel Memory FAD wrist rest for computer, keyboard, and mouse. And that's just to protect. You can buy whatever wrist rest you want. That's to protect. You can just use a board, anything that's going to keep your hand like this rather than typing like that so that you don't get carpal tunnel syndrome. And then the last thing, this is another thing I ran into. This is crazy. Okay, so we bought the Lexar D40E 128 gigabyte dual USB 3.2, make sure you get 3.2, Gen 1 Type-C jump drive, USB-C flash. And by the way, the nice thing about this drive is it'll convert from USB-C, you can flip it around to a USB regular connection, okay? And then, it was only $16.10 for 128 gigabytes. Now, the intention of this drive was to plug into my router. And then so that I could share files between multiple computers. That's just not going to work. I'm telling you, I've tried everything I can to try to use that router. And then when I pulled this drive out of the router, it hadn't been used. I mean, it wasn't like I was copying files back and forth. Okay, this thing was hot as hell. So that router was using a lot of electricity to have this drive plugged in. Not a good configuration. The other thing I wanted to tell you, the reason why I want to talk about this USB drive, is it came with the FAT32. Now, what's wrong with the FAT32? FAT32 doesn't support large files. The reason I bought this drive was to be able to transfer videos, because sometimes I work on my laptop, and then I want to take the video, copy it from my laptop, and then put it onto the my main server, which is what we're building right now. Okay? Well, with a FAT32, you can't copy that file. It's too big. FAT32 doesn't support that size file. So what do you want? Well, you could reformat that drive to an NTFS drive if you're using Windows, and that's the only operating system you're using. But we're not using Windows. We're using Linux 22.2 for the server. Okay, so what file format? So you go with FAT.exe, all right? And Linux supports that format, and Windows supports that format. Now, I tried to format the drive to an ext4, which is the file system format that Linux runs on. And you got BTRFS, and of course, you also got XFS. It depends on whatever operating file system you want to run on your Linux machine. But both Windows and Linux support the FAT.exe, and that supports large files. Okay. Now, Linux can read NTFS, but Windows has rigged Windows 11 so that it will not read an ext4, which is what I wanted to run on the drive because I like that file system better. But because Windows has torpedoed that, they could easily support it. They just want to make money. You know that for sure. All right. So then, of course, we had long connections to the monitors, and so we had to buy a coupler. This is the VEC Link HDMI coupler, 8K, HDMI 2.1 female-to-female extension adapter to extend 2 short cables. Supports 8K at 60 hertz, 4K at 120 hertz, compatible with laptop PC. So that you can take 2 3-foot HDMI cables, use this coupler, put them together, and now you got a 6-foot cable. Now, why did I do that? Why not just buy a 6-foot cable? Because they're damn expensive, man. And I got like 10 HDMI cables because over the years I've been buying TVs and everything. Now, some of the HDMI cables have gotten pretty old, so you want to look at that. And then, of course, you can go out, and I don't recommend this. I've been told if you're going to run Windows, I bought the Windows thing. Now, the last thing we're just going to discuss, getting long in the tooth here, was, okay, I have an old laptop, and this was just, I went out and bought the NinjaBat battery for the HP. And of course, I've got an HP DV7 laptop for many years old, but look, for $30, man, I got a whole new laptop. And then I ran, and the last video I was telling you to run Linux LDME, no, it's X. You want the second operating. Go to Linux Mint, and I think it's XFCE is the operating system that you want to install on an old laptop. That thing screams, and with I got 2 batteries for it, so I can actually run this old laptop for about 8 hours, no problem, on those 2 batteries. Whereas if you get a modern laptop, which is what I use to render my videos and everything, those batteries only last about an hour or 2 sometimes. All right, let's get into putting the motherboard in. Okay, so you're going to want a headlamp, whether you got one or not, or a flashlight, or maybe just an overhanging light, whatever you got. Now, this is called a magnetizer, okay? And if you don't have a little tool set for your computer, okay, you can just run this through right here in this magnetizer, and you can magnetize this screwdriver. Now, look what it does. See that? You can just put that screw right on the screwdriver, and you're ready to rock and roll. And the reason that's important, I can't tell you the number of times I've dropped screws into the motherboard and you can't get them out of the case. They're rattling around in there. They might short something out. If you got a screw underneath your motherboard, so being able to magnetize your screwdriver to screw these screws in is very important. Now, let's get to the manuals for 1 second. So we're going to get into this. So this is the motherboard installation right here. And the main thing that I wanted to get was the screw. So this is a 632 5mm. Now, what was cool was the case came with screws. And if you look on here, it actually labels what the screws are. This is a screw 632 by 5mm, which is these screws right here, obviously. I'm still moving along with the build. But the thing I like is, if with the case, and by the way, a lot of cases don't have manuals worth it. Pardon my French, shit, because they're crap manuals. This is actually a pretty good manual that came with this case. And we already talked about the case 2 seconds ago. And the last video, I went over the water cooler. Not going to do that again. And then, but I did want to get into where we're at in the build. So we're going to be starting to hook up all of the connectors. And this is at page 30 in the manual. I mean, my God, we were a long time getting here. And so you can see, you know, this is detailing all the connectors you're going to make. Like I said, I'm going to try to find some YouTube videos on connections, and then you can just go through the pages. So let's get over to the case real quick. Actually, let me get the headlamp. Hold on. All right. So one of the things I've made a mistake in the past, and I've talked to some people that build computers, is I would put the power supply in the computer and then cable it up. No, what we want to do is we want to make all the connections. These are the power supply cables. We're going to connect these up to the motherboard first, okay? And then we'll bring them. Hopefully you can hook the cables to the power supply and then put the power supply in the case and screw it in. Same with the hard drives. You notice I'm not putting the hard drive, but the nice thing about this case that I loved, and by the way, best case ever, this NZT. The thing that I loved about this case was you could see we just took the hard drive bay right over here and just took it right out. So now we got all of the space to do our cabling and our cable management. And then, of course, I put the cooler in because look at the room I had on the case. And by the way, I think I got it oriented right. I think this strap means that this cooler is supposed to go in this configuration, which would make sense because look at this. That's going to come right in on this side on the cooler. Okay, now underneath these are my heat sinks. You know, we talked about that we've got 4 M2s. You know, one here, that's crucial for 4 terabyte. The Western Digital, the Samsung, and then, of course, another crucial. All right, so we got plenty of room to work, but I wanted to get into installing the motherboard real quick. So like I told you, I used that magnetized screwdriver, and if you can see it, there's a screw there, screw there, screw there, screw there, screw there, screw there, screw there. So there's a lot of screws you got to get in to the case. All right, and so, you know, my hands aren't the steadiest in the world, so being able to magnetize that screwdriver really made it easy for me to get those screws in, and I wanted to talk about getting the motherboard into the case real quick. So of course, you're going super slow. You're just kind of setting that case down in there, and then I was trying. And by the way, the great thing about this case is it comes with the risers installed. If you've done other computer builds, the risers, you have to screw the risers in, okay, and then screw in the motherboard. This one just came with the risers, so I didn't even have to do that. Now, what happened was I couldn't get these holes lined up for the screws real well. And so I was kind of being gentle and maneuvering that motherboard, and all of a sudden, bam, it kind of snapped into place. And I was like, God dang, that's awesome, man. Because with motherboards in the past, with the risers and everything, it's hard to get them sliding around. This thing, it actually, I don't even know how it works, but it just kind of dropped right in on top of the screws, which was freaking awesome. And so I didn't have to line up these holes to put these screws in at all. So you can see we're moving along. Let's look at the front. I haven't even looked at the ports on the front of there. Look at that. The blue means, I believe that's USB 3.2. The red's 3.2. I think those are 3.0 or 3.1. And I was looking, well, we'll get into all these connections when we get to that point. But that's what it looks like right there. Oh, sorry, I hope I had the camera in the right place. And then, of course, this is going to go on the water cooler. All right, so we're moving right along. One last thing, and I don't know why it wasn't in my notes. This is the Rogue Herculex. This is going to support the motherboard. It's an extra. It was like $30, and it's pretty cool. I had to play. I've already played with it. And you can see it's RGB, so, we got RGB. I think these are RGB fans here. We got RGB memory. The cooler is RGB here. And then, of course, the motherboard supporter right there is going to be RGB. So this thing's going to really look cool. And by the way, I haven't showed you the top of the case. you got glass here and you got glass on the side. So it's going to be a really cool effect. And I did want to get into these plugs for 1 second. Now, one of the things is, and we've talked about this in a previous video, but I wanted to go over it again real quick, is your computers are vampire devices. And you can go out and buy these plugs. They're not that expensive, and you can see they're numbered 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then it just plugs into your socket. And then whatever you plug in to the plug, this one comes with 2 remotes, which is pretty cool. So I just wanted to show you how this works. So this is my my shredder. Now that shredder, I don't know how much electricity it consumes. You can go out and buy a device where you can plug in and see how much your vampire devices are consuming. But I just was experimenting. I went, well, I got to use these plugs somewhere. So look at this. So all you do is this is the #1 plug. There you go. You see that light come on? Off, on, off, on. So what I'm going to be doing is plugging all of my computer into the UPS. And of course, I've got 5 plugs, and we'll be able to cut on and off devices in my office so that they're not vampire devices. And these plugs will go in the back of the UPS. All right, let's see if we can find a good wiring video. Peace out. All right, let's get back to the ultimate PC computer build. Video number 3. So if you didn't know, most motherboards come with a plastic piece that you can use to line up all your power connections for your case. If you watch many YouTube videos, they plug the cables in individually, but I always use these blocks. But on modern cases, that's no longer necessary. Okay, and then of course we're going to have to figure out, because we're going to route those power cables here in just a few. So I was looking in here and I was like, where in the hell do I bring the power cables through to the front of the case? And then if you look on here, it says push. Here, let's get it back. Push to remove. So it makes perfect sense. So you can route your power cables right through that. And by the way, this is the NZT case. I mean, I'm loving this case. I mean, my God, as I go through it. Now, these are the case connectors, and these are the ones you're going to want to connect up first. Okay, now, maybe it wasn't intended to come through the bottom of the case right here, but I want to leave as much room as I can for my power cables, and also where the ports are on the motherboard. So let's get into the pages of the manual real quick, and I'll kind of show you what we're doing here. And so I'm just going through it 1 page at a time. And so this is the F audio front panel header. Now, look at where it's located. See, the front of the case is, or the back ports are on the left-hand side. And so that little connector is kind of like off in the lower left corner. Well, look at here. So that's why I routed that cable right through the left side of the case there. All right, so this is your USB cable. Well, let me flip back in the video 1 second. Hold on. All right, so this is absolutely the first connection that you're going to make to your motherboard, and this is your power up, your hard disk drive activity, reset switch, chassis, speaker, power switch, power LED. And what's nice with these modern cases, you can see I didn't have to use that little adapter. This actually says F panel on it. And the pinout, the way it is, it'll only fit on one way. So you really can't put it on the wrong way. And this is just the USB-C adapter header. And you can look at that. There's no other connector on the motherboard that looks anything like that. So I'm going to tell you, you can't screw this one up. Okay, the main thing is, the hard part, the time-consuming part, is to figure out where these ports are on the motherboard and then route the cables accordingly. Obviously, I want to come out from the left side for this cable. For this cable here, I came out from the right side underneath the motherboard. For this cable here, I could have come out on the right side, but I just wanted it to kind of loop around and use up some of that cable. And then, of course, for this cable, that's the audio cable. Well, not the audio. What is this cable? Hold on. I think we were just talking about it. No, not the audio cable. Yeah, this is the FU3C20G US Type-C header, and you can see it's right here next to the memory on the case, and that's kind of a weird, these modern cases, see, and it even labels it on the case. It says FU3C20G, and it's a weird connector. It's kind of like a power connector for the back of a SATA drive, and so you really can't plug it into the wrong place. It's just a matter of doing your cable management so that it comes in from the right place. And that's it for the case connections. I can't believe I'm actually through it. It used to be there was, a ton of cables that came with these cases. But I guess, this case is designed for a modern motherboard. And, you wouldn't want to be putting an old motherboard in this case. Well, I don't think you could because of the connections. All right. And look. You can see, oh, by the way, I had a quick story on these brackets. This is for the water cooler. And in a previous video, I had these brackets mounted upside down. Because you want the little hole on top, and the flat part actually goes to the bottom. I tell you what, it's not intuitive sometimes, but it was, obviously a quick fix. And like you saw in the video, the previous video, these are nice and loose so that when I attach the water cooler, which is right here, we're going to be good to go. All right, so I found an excellent video on the graphics card, and we'll probably put that in the next video. And I have to give these people attribution. The last video, I didn't give proper attribution, but I couldn't find the video after I recorded the video, and I was going back trying to figure it out, but we'll get that attribution in there. Let's start making the power connections, and we'll show you what that's going to look like probably in the next video. All right. All right, let's get back to the ultimate video studio PC build. And boy, I tell you, let me just give you a few things that you're going to have to think about. And man, if you're working for a living, hopefully this video series on building a computer will get you through this. I have not been out of my house for a week, because if you don't discover anything that might be faulty from the factory within about a month, it's not easy to return anything. They usually give you about 30 days. And so it's important that I get this computer built and then powered up, which we'll do a video on that, to make sure that everything is working. And so I'm like whipping myself, but it's taken forever because I'm dumber than a bag of stones. And so I wanted to get into a couple of things. Okay, so this is actually a label printer. You might want to buy one of these. It's great for labeling your cables. Once I wire that computer up in the office, and I wanted to show you my rechargeable battery collection because I've used my headlamp so much. I'm constantly recharging batteries. I don't know about you, but I have batteries in everything. Here's another thing I ran into was I was trying to figure out, and luckily the manual, it was good about this. See, these screws are 632 by 5 millimeter, and in the manual, it actually tells you which screws to use where in the build. Now, one of the things, the thing I don't like is I wish they had the resealable bags. So what I'll do is I'll print a label for future builds, because I'm actually have to go back and rebuild a previous computer. And so I'll put the size of the screw on, here's a resealable bag, and that way I have that information. If you look over here, this is kind of my screw pile from previous builds. These are SATA cables back here. And then, of course, I showed you the screwdriver and how to magnetize it. I'm going to tell you, man, having a magnetized screwdriver was real important. So let's get into a couple of what could possibly be a huge mistake. And this is going to, I haven't made but one huge mistake so far, but this one's going to cost me some time. Now, once I got down through all the cabling and everything hooked up to the PC, which I'm going to show you here in just one second, I noticed that I had these. I'm pretty sure these are heat sinks for the M2 drives. Now, the motherboard has a heat sink underneath the M2 drive, which I told you in a previous video. I pulled one of those up by accident, trying to get the plastic off. I'm betting, I'm going to talk to, and by the way, using AI, if I hadn't had Grok, I'd be lost on some of this stuff on this computer build. So anyway, let's before I get, this is, by the way, this was from a previous build, but I did do good. I got the MX6. This is for the CPU, and that's what you want. And we're going to make an X on that CPU. I haven't mounted that yet. And then I did talk about this maybe in this video or a previous video, but I wanted to show these to you because see how they're metal? Can you hear that? I hope you can hear that. A regular USB drive is just a plastic piece of crap, and that's why I went with these Lexars. But what I didn't understand is these are modern. See, it flips around. You can flip it around to USB-A or USB-C, so that way I can plug it in. You can plug it into a phone and just use it that way if you wanted to. And I like the metal because this metal will hold up. Plastic drive, you hit it with your leg, plugged into a laptop, because a lot of times, that's why it's a laptop. I put it in my lap. You can break those plastic USB drives. But the thing I wanted to get on real quick was this came formatted FAT32. We talked about this, I think, already. You want to reformat it to EXFAT. That way you can load, because these are what I'm going to use to transport videos from the laptop to the main server. Okay, so a lot of times if I catch a good YouTube video, like we've got one coming up in the next video about installing the graphics card, and it was outstanding. And I'm going to put that video in my next video, and of course I'll give the creator of that video attribution in the description. So hopefully I won't get copyrighted or sued for using somebody else's video. All right, so let's keep going. So this is the magnetizer. We talked about that in the previous video. Now, I had a couple of cables, and we're going to get into this. Is actually a noise sensor, and but there's nothing. There's no picture of this in the manual. Now it does tell you that there's a 2-pin connection on the motherboard, and you're like, well, I don't know what this is for, and do I really care about having a noise sensor in the case? And I really don't. So I'm probably just going to leave this out. But what I had to do was, see, if you type in, let's get that on the video. If you type in, whoops, it's upside down. If you type in that number right there into Grok and say, what is this cable for? That's how I found out what this cable was for. Now this here, I actually have hooked up. So this was another cable, and I'll show it to you when we get over to the computer wiring. This was a thermal cable, and there was 2 of these, but I had no idea what it was, and there was no picture in the manual of it. And I'm like, so what I had to do, once again, I've typed in this part number, and when you ask Grok, you got to ask the question properly. Given this part number and this motherboard, what is it for? And and where does it go on the motherboard? And so Grok actually answered that question extremely well. That's how I figured out what it was. I guarantee I could have asked 100 people. They wouldn't have known what that cable was. Here's the next thing I ran into. The DDR wind blade. What the hell is a DDR wind blade? But I mean, DDR indicates it has something to do with memory. The included DDR wind blade is specifically designed for memory cooling. Connect it to the designated fan header. See the table below, and you can read temperatures from the DDR temperature monitoring point and adjust the fan speed operating mode in the Gigabyte Control Center. For settings details, please navigate to the ultimate. Look at here. Does it show you where to hook it up on the motherboard? No. Does it show you how to screw it in? No. So these manuals, the people that write these manuals just suck, man. They just freaking suck. So I'm sitting here, finally I found, it was actually on YouTube. Grok didn't answer the question. There was a YouTube short video, and it actually showed where the fan went on the motherboard. And then, of course, I did have to talk to, well, if you look here, this actually clued me in. It's going to connect up to the SysFan 4, the Fan 5 pump, or the Fan 6 pump. And if you look at the diagram of the motherboard, that's, there's 3 different places that you could hook up the connection. Now, one of the things that this came with, it comes with a really short cable. And I'm like, well, this thing ain't long enough for me to hook it up. Well, it turns out there was an extender cable, which wasn't labeled. And you don't see the extender cable here, do you? Nope. Nothing in the manual about the extender cable, but you can plug this in to this short little cable into the extender cable, and that gives you the length to go anywhere you want in the case. This is all the stuff I keep running into, man. So, good God, let's get over to the computer. But I wanted to show you all this first. I may have to rip off those heat sinks off of the M2 drives. This is going to be a question I'm going to ask Grok. These just could be extras for like if, you know, if later on, because I bet those M2 drives, once you run them for a while, you know, they probably melt these heat sinks into, you know, whatever. And you may want to replace these down the road if you're going to like put a new M2 drive in, because those M2 drives only last about 5 years. So maybe these are extras. I don't know yet. We're going to have to find out. And that's a question I got to ask Grok. Nothing in the manual. Nothing in the manual. Let's go to the M2 page. All right. See, I got this all set up for you. So here's the M2 page. And let's see. When using a single-sided M2, first attach the bundled M2 thermal pad to the pre-installed thermal pad on the M2 connector before installing the M2 SSD. When installing single-side, first attach the bundled M2 thermal pad. So maybe this is where it's telling me. And it says installing the M2 thermal pad applicable only for M2 connectors with pre-installed thermal pads. I have no idea what that means. Does that mean this goes in? We don't know. It says do not install the bundled thermal pad when using a double-sided M2 SSD. Okay. I assume what I've got is a single-sided M2. Because underneath the M2 is just all the components, you know, and the top has, you know, it just looks like the top of, you know, a CPU. So I'm thinking I screwed up. This is sounding more and more like these got to go in. But let's get into the wiring here. Okay. So we'll see if my plan works out, but I wanted to talk about some of the issues. Let me get down here on my stool. Man, when you're old, it's tough. So, by the way, working here, I mean, this is easier than working on that table because I can just sit here and think about things. And we're going to talk about a few things. Now, you see what I've done is I've wired this up outside of the case. Now, the plan is, and we'll see if it works, is, you know, I'm going to, obviously, once I've made all the power connections, is then I'm going to roll this up and mount it into the drive. Now, it's important to have that fan facing the right direction. Now, obviously, I mean, common sense wise, and there's nothing in the manual about, you know, how to do this. I'm assuming, okay, that the fan has to face out, you know, because that thing's going to lay in vertically, because I wouldn't think you would want it blowing into the back of the motherboard. But that's going to be just another quick question. I know you're thinking, well, that's obviously how it's got to go. It's not obvious to me. The other thing we ran into, and I don't know if I can show it to you. Maybe I can. Yeah, see this cable right here? Okay, this is going to the USB fan hub that came with the case. All right, now, I don't know why they mounted it this way, because once I put the hard drives in, by the way, I made the connections on these hard drives ahead of time, and they went in perfectly. Now, when I say I made the power connections, but I didn't make the SATA connections until after the hard drives were in, because it was too difficult, all 4 cables. But all right, so what I'm getting into is this cable actually comes out in this direction behind the hard drives. So luckily, I had already pulled that cable out. And otherwise, once I put the hard drives in, what would you do? What would you do? I mean, you know, let's get over in here. Look, I got to get the light on it. I mean, are you going to get down behind there? So I don't know why they didn't mount this like vertically, or maybe had this facing out in, well, probably vertically would have been best. But I guess because they're managing the routing to the fans, if you look there, there's the routing cables to the fan. All right. So maybe that's why they did it that way. I did want to just talk about that. Is there anything else here? All right. So the last thing I haven't done yet is I haven't put the power cables into the graphics card yet, because I like I said, that's going to be in the next video. So we're gonna work on that. So I'm going to make those power connections first before, and then just route the cable through. Now, I'm not going to mount the graphics board, and I'll give you my plan, and we'll see if it's going to work. Oh, God, I'm getting up again. All right. So here's an actual picture of the USB hub. So you can see, they've got the cable coming out on this side. So I don't know, maybe that's just the only way that they can mount it into the case. But like I said, I had to route this cable back this way to be able to plug it in up top into the power module. And we went over the case connections. They were relatively easy. I'm a bit concerned about the front panel connector, because that's a weird looking front panel connector. We talked about that earlier in the video. All right, so let's get into the wiring just 1 minute. So I wanted to show these. See, there's two little pins underneath the main connector here. Let me get the phone off to the side so I can get the light on it. Okay, these are the thermal connectors, and look at these wires. They just kind of run down. I mean, they're nice and long, and you're saying, well, what will you do with those? And so I asked Grok what we're going to do with those. And so you can route them wherever you want in the case. And so Grok was recommending you put one in the back, because this is a 2-chamber case. So we're going to put one in the back to monitor the heat on the hard drives, which I don't think is going to need monitoring, but you never know. And then the other one I'm going to kind of hang over top of the main concern I have is these M2 drives, because like I said, those heat sinks. So I'm going to kind of hang it right in here, so that hopefully you can see that, so that we can kind of get the heat off of the CPU and the heat off of the M2 drives. So I'm kind of glad I looked into how to do those thermal connectors. And as you can see, we haven't mounted, oh yeah, good thing I got on this. So we're going to talk about this. So the Arctic cooler here, the water cooler, came with 2 cables. All right, so one cable had 3 outputs. It had a fan, a pump, and a VRM. And so I had to get with Grok. Oh, sorry, I had it going off to the side there. I had to get with Grok, because I was like, well, wait a minute. Which of these cables do I want to use? And then the second cable just went to the CPU fan. Okay. So at first, Grok was saying just use the one cable, because that'd be an easy connection. It just got one connection. Doing more research, because you got to ask Grok the right way. No, it's better to connect these up. Now I thought, okay, if you look right here, can you see that fan connector right there? These are 3 fan connectors right here. Okay, so this is actually the pump. And actually, this is another, we'll get onto that fan in just a second. And then you want to use the CPU. You can use a fan connector, but you're going to use the CPU fan connector for the fan, okay? Because there was one labeled fan. Now the VRM, I wasn't sure what that meant or where that went, And you can connect that. This motherboard comes with a CPU opt. Okay, so you can connect it there, or you can connect it to a fan connector. So I could have connected it right down there. Okay, but I think I hooked it up to the CPU opt. Now, this is that wind fan right here that we were just talking about. Now, if you look, there's a case screw right there. Let me get the light on it. All right. Now, I just figured this out on my own by looking at that short, and you see how it bends down, and it's going to kind of blow some air onto these memory modules. But one problem that I've got is once you hook up the CPU power with this case, where am I going to route these wires? And the only way I know to do this is I'm actually going to move these up behind the fan. But I think that might interfere with the airflow a little bit. Speaking of airflow, we'll get more into that in just 1 second. So we've talked about the fan. And you can see, oh, here's another one that's got me baffled. Okay, this cable came with a USB-C, okay, and I'm pretty sure I got it in the right place, but what is this for? Now, I mean, what I was thinking I might do is route this cable through here, and that way I can plug this in to something if I need to, and it'll just kind of hang outside the case. Otherwise, I don't see a connection for that cable. Anyway, that's going to be strange. And so here's the GPU, and see, we're going to have to look at the power connections on this, which I'm kind of looking at it right now. We'll see, and we'll get the right cable and we'll hook that up. Now, here's another thing. So this is the graphics support holder, which is going to hold this graphics card in the case. Okay, and I've already hooked up it to the fan connection right there. If you look, there's the fan connection. So all I got to do is, once I get the graphics card in, we're going to talk about the plan for the graphics card here in 1 second. So I think we've hit on all the connections. Now, one thing I noticed was I had mounted the radiator a bit close to this side of the case. Now, if you notice, there's a fan right there. And so this cable was running really close to that fan. So I took the time to move this over just a little bit. Now, maybe I should probably go all the way to the right, which kind of thinking about that. But then I think that I want it just so that I can get this mounted onto the CPU easily. Now, the plan is, and we'll see if it works out, I'll let you know, is once I get the power module mounted into the case, okay, we're going to flip this case onto its side, and then I'll show you that video on the graphics card, and then all of this will get mounted when it's on its side. This will get mounted when it's on its side, and then we're done, really, with the computer build, as far as I know. And then it's just a matter of powering everything up and seeing if we got this sucker right. All right, so let's. Boy, I tell you, I've been working at this because there were so many questions. There were so many questions that we had to answer. I mean, look, I just wanted to hit these brackets for 1 second again. Okay, I had these mounted upside down, and if I hadn't found that video that was in my last video on how to mount these, I would have known that one, I would have known they were upside down. Two, I wouldn't have known that they needed to go in this direction, because it is in the manual, kind of. But it was hard to figure out. So, once we mount the CPU, this will all get tightened up. Man, I tell you, I can't believe how much work this has been. But, it's because I'm dumber than a bag of stones. If you knew exactly what you were doing, it would be easy. And this was another connection. I think that goes to the motherboard, to the case. The other concern that I've got that I just wanted to talk about 1 second. Okay. If you look at this case, there's no, the buttons are on the bottom, which I don't like. So if I want to hook up a USB drive, and plug it into these front ports, and this is USB-C connection, and I think this is an audio right here, but all you got is the power switch. Okay? You notice there's no reset button. Because I noticed, there is an actual reset 2-pin connector over here, and then of course on your front, the main strip here, there's a 2-prong reset right there, but there's no cable for it. You saw in the box, and there's no way to do it on the case. So I've never seen that before. Most cases come with the reset button, but maybe these modern motherboards. Now there is a reset button in the case, but are you going to take your case apart to push the little reset button on the motherboard? I don't think so, but it's there if you need it. I guess I would just be powering the thing off, which can corrupt the operating system sometimes. All right, this might be the 4th video, and then of course we'll tack onto this when we get the final thing. Find out if we need those thermal pads. We'll talk about that later on, and I think we're just about done with building this computer. And then the moment of truth arrives. I tell you what, I'm going to be shaking in my shoes to see if this thing powers up properly and everything comes on and works. And then, of course, the crazy thing is, and until you get the operating system on, I'm really not going to know if these hard drives are working or not. You can feel them and see if they're spinning and everything. That'll be one indication. But how are you going to know how are you going to know if these 4 M2 drives are working or not until you load up a disk management tool and see it? Well, in the BIOS, the BIOS will tell you if it sees those hard drives. So, you know, it's going to be a lot of work once we just power it on to make sure that everything is working properly. Now, the fans are easy. They're either spinning or they're not, or they're lit up or they're not. So, you know, you don't know if and then, of course, is it your connections or whatever. Tell you what, when you get into a computer build like this, it's not for the faint of heart. It's a huge, huge project. All right, let's make the video.